Hello, XPTers. Um, we are having our first one, well, what I'm calling is our first interview, even though I've already interviewed Michael Haverty, but I haven't posted it yet. But that will be coming soon. But I believe this one will be probably posted first. Um, so about a week and a half ago, I got to see an amazing show called Marooned over at the Center for Poetry Arts. Unfortunately, it's closed now. So if you have not seen it, you're just out of luck. I'm sorry about that. Because it was a really amazing show. But we have the two creators with us. We have Alex Vernon and also Sarah Olmstead Thomas. And
Right.
they together create are together are the company Alex and Olmstead. Um,
Olmstead
yes.
with
So
a
you
D.
guys are originally from Baltimore, Maryland. Is that correct? Is that where you reside?
That's where we live now. I'm originally from Tennessee,
And I'm from Virginia.
but we've lived in Baltimore for the last year.
Okay. All right.
And we've been making theater in Baltimore for over a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a relationship with Happenstance Theater, which started around in 2012. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah, we started with them in 2012. They've been going since
2006.
yeah. Yeah.
And what is that relationship made up of? How did you get involved with them?
Well, they came and saw our theatrical experiments at a place called Clown Cabaret in DC, the DC Clown Cabaret. We would be signing up very frequently at the time. This was in 2011, 2012, and trying all kinds of things. We would try puppetry acts, we would try mime acts, and musical acts, really anything. And Mark and Sabrina, who run Happenstance Theater, came to those shows and saw our work. And in turn, we went and saw a Happenstance Theater show and really fell in love with their company. And they invited us on board to create a show with them. And then that's just been going on ever since.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and the Clown Cabaret was this great performance. Sort of it was monthly for a while and then it went every other month. But it was basically, a show that was billed as a laboratory. It was made for performers to try out new work. They've done the work at home and now this is the first time trying it out in front of an audience to get that critical feedback. So it was so valuable, just like the XPT format, right? Where
Yeah.
you're creating something and you're able to put it together, but it needs that audience component to really learn what the piece is. So we
mhm.
learned so much creating a lot of work in short time, uh, putting it in front of an audience, learning from that, coming back the next month, building something totally different. And that's how we built a lot of work.
Gotcha. And are you guys like officially employees of the theater, or you just kind of come back when you have an idea for a show, or you help them out with their shows? How does that work?
We're company members, so uh we have a certain set schedule throughout the year of shows that we make together and shows that we perform together, and then our working life, our lives, our income is basically coming from both sources. So Happenstance Theater is about half of it, and the other half is Alex and Olmstead projects. But the two really are so wonderful for us. We learn so much working collaboratively with Happenstance Theater with this five-member ensemble. It's five writers in the room, five directors, five performers. And so we've learned so much about collaboration and compromise and also shared vision, how to really how to create theater that's bigger with more people and how to work together really. And then with the two of us being able to focus on puppetry and uh, with the parameters of only four hands and what we
Right.
can and what we cannot do within that framework is an interesting challenge as well. And the one informs the other for us so much.
Hmm.
That sounds like a great working relationship. I'm sure probably more typical in like places like New York or London, but here in Atlanta, I can't think of too many organizations where you can kind of step in and collaborate like that on a group that you can kind of trust and kind of pull from, and they can pull from you.
Yeah, and even folks in in New York that we've talked to talk about how unique it is that there is, a five-person ensemble that's been together for what, going on like
Thir
11, 12, 13 years
13.
now. Just because it's so hard to um, find a group that meshes well, that also, people don't move away or all of a sudden, oh, I have to do this side project, so I'm going to step out for a year or two, or I have this life thing going on. Like it's very, very special to be able to work with the same people consistently, um, because it's always, uh, you know, the more you work with somebody, the more you learn everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and how you can sort of deal with conflict before it happens, because you know how people work and you know what sets people off. Um, so, we're not a perfect company and we don't get along all the time, but we're able to, clock like, oh yeah, okay, that person, they're not actually mad. They need a snack and they need a 5 minute break. And then we'll get back to it and everybody's fine. Or like, oh, these people had a blow up, but it's not the end of the company. Like it's just two different opinions and they're going to be fine in a second.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, humans working together is always going to be a little messy and exciting. I mean, like the good with the challenging. We also marvel at the fact that we are able to do this. I think it is rare. I think, like as Alex mentioned, circumstances of life, we've all been able to be in the same location for long enough. We've all been able to make this commitment and continue making the commitment into the foreseen and unforeseeable. We really don't know what's to come, but it is, we keep showing up and also I mean, life is very precious too. I mean, we don't know how much time we have
Very true.
ultimately, and no, none of us know. So the fact that we have been able to do this so long as an ensemble, like as a band, we also talk about, we sort of think like, oh, we're kind of like a band in this way. And it is unusual.
Yeah.
Were
Actually,
you?
that's a perfect segue for me to bring in Raymond Carr, who's also a part of this conversation as well. Um, Raymond, you just had an exhibit close this past weekend. How does it feel? How does it feel at the ripe age, uh, old age of 40,
43.
43, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
43, to be having your whole life flash before you in an exhibit and then close it
Uh,
down?
yeah, my mausoleum. I'm so eternally grateful for the opportunity to do that, but it's one of those things where it's like redoing your resume or updating your reel or portfolio. You're constantly seeing either the projects that aren't there or the projects that could have been slightly different or better and all that kind of stuff. And so walking through that, it's it's really special, but also I'm like, I should have done that, or if I was able to get the puppets from that job, or because that was part of the thing. I was trying to just collect as many puppets from different projects I worked on, and so stuff from Netflix was coming over from Europe, but that was going to cost $1 bajillion. And other puppets that I had worked with on Lazy Town, those were just disintegrated, and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it's weird because it's also just like one of those things where I'm not going to be able to do it again anytime soon. And it's hard. It's like theater, you always think that next time I'm going to try and do something like that or whatever. So yeah, I definitely would do some different things if I could do it again. But I try not to focus on that stuff because that's the kind of thing that makes you crazy. Uh, so just trying to appreciate all of that kind of recognition and stuff.
Yeah, and it's amazing too, just because obviously starting with clown parents, that also worked with puppets. And but away from that, the center was almost your kind of second home for puppetry in a sense. So
Yeah.
starting there at such a young age, and then kind of being able to show off what you've done since you've been there and since you left, not only the center but also Atlanta, do some incredible things, and then kind of come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having it at the center is eternally special. I mean, it'd be great if I was in other museums, but I don't think it would have felt the same. Because I started there, saw my first shows there when I was like 17. I did my first show there, yeah, when I was 17, XPT. And even though it's an 18-year-old, 18 and up show, Bobby Box, who used to be have Wade's job, who passed away some years ago, he saw something in me and he allowed me to apply when I was 17 because my birthday was going to be like a couple days before the actual showcase. It was like, all right, that's close enough. But yeah, so to have that kind of thing happen at the center just makes it extra special and hope to, at the end of the day, all of that stuff is because of other people wanted to just play with me. And so it's easy for me to take pride in a lot of it because it's not all me and it never feels like me. It feels like all of my friends and people who have just decided to believe in some crazy ass idea that I had at midnight and then spend the next 6 months putting it together. So when looking at it, I don't really see myself as much as I see a group of memories from a group of really tremendous artists that have helped me out over the years, including that guy, Wade Raymond Tilton.
Since we have now done our introductions, the reason I brought Raymond on, Raymond got to see your piece Marooned as well, and was equally as enthralled as I was and seeing it. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but
It
for
was
me,
fucking great.
Marooned felt like an XPT piece in some ways, kind of like an XPT piece that had matured in the sense that it was taken from its initial 5 or 10 minute run and then blown into something much larger. So if you don't mind, I would love to start asking some questions about the process of putting that show together. In fact, where did the kind of the germ of the idea? It feels maybe I'm putting too much into it, but it feels like a study in isolation. So my mind obviously goes to the pandemic. Did that initial thought start with the pandemic or sometime after?
Uh, we conceived of the show and we did a little workshop showing actually in 2019, so right before the
Okay.
pandemic. But it was definitely already interested in exploring themes of like isolation and loneliness and longing, but in a comedic, yeah.
Oh, no, I just got excited to share something, but you should finish your
Oh,
thought.
um, just thinking about like loving science fiction, loving space, loving what that can be a bigger metaphor for. Um, I think I'm very much an introvert by nature, and so I always like to return to that like, oh, I just wish I had some alone time, in the workshop to build. But then, you need to go out and be with other people. So it's like that desire of like, oh, I wish I could just be totally alone. And then when you're alone, you're like, oh, I wish I could see my friends, So Marooned is sort of that to the extreme. It's somebody who's as alone as you can get and wanting to get back as much as you can. And then when the pandemic hit, it just became even more so.
Yeah, I think we didn't, going into making the piece, we didn't realize how much it would be about isolation and loneliness until we were actually writing the show and reckoning with the reality that, oh, if you do crash a spaceship on an unknown planet, it couldn't be more uh devastating. Like there's the idea of the adventure and like, oh yeah, it goes as far as a human has ever gone before. That's right. Journey into the unknown, and then you're in the unknown, and it's 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 so horrifying.
Yeah, it's like the fun of a road trip. It's so fun when you're driving, but then like if you get a flat tire, it's just like, oh my God, like why did I ever leave home? This is so dumb.
Yeah, so we knew it's like Marooned, a space comedy, the foibles of outer space, miscommunications and, unknown creatures and strange encounters. And certainly there's like comedy abounds, but when we were actually putting it together, there were certainly these sequences in which it felt so dire. Right. If your oxygen pack is slowly leaking or slowly running out, and the reality of it. And so I think we discovered that in the writing of it, but certainly in the experience of COVID, which was a totally universal experience for humanity. There was a deepening. And when we returned to this workshop version, we we leaned into those bigger questions more. And
Yeah, because then all of a sudden the entire world had a shared touch point on what it means to be isolated and what it means to want to get back to something you once knew.
I think that's really interesting too, because uh, I don't think it just happened with pandemic. I think the pandemic really kind of set focus to this idea that we're possibly more isolated than we've ever been. But
mm,
things like uh, the internet, with different viewpoints that seem to be dividing people more than it is bringing people together. Things I'm an older guy. I'm 50 years old. So the thing of having only a certain amount of channels that, like, I remember when I went to school, you would talk about certain shows because they were the most popular shows. But even though diversity is fantastic and you want more of it, it definitely takes away some of that connectivity of having those conversations, going back to school and trying to recite jokes that you heard on SNL or whatever it was the big show at the time. You don't seem to have that as much now as you did then. So even though I don't think um, the pandemic is the only source of the isolation. I think it's been something that's kind of been building and building. I just think it brought it into zero, a pinpoint focus, and of like, oh my
mm,
gosh, yeah, I'm not as close to people as I used to be. And on top of that, that kind of happens as you get older too. I saw a meme not too long ago where it was talking about the amount of friends that you have when you're 14, and it's like, I don't know, 8 or 10 or something like that. And then when you're 25, it goes down to like 6 friends. And then when you hit 30, it's 3 friends. And when you're 40, you're all alone or something like that. I think that's a kind of a human experience that a lot of us face as we start aging as well.
I had a question, a process question. So you referenced a couple times the script or writing it down and what have you. When you guys were first devising this or throughout, is one of you actually writing a script? Because it's so nonverbal for the most part. Obviously, there's some dialogue throughout, but how does that process work? Or is the script just like bullet points and suggestions?
yes, Raymond, great question. It starts off more bullet points, and we sort of refer to them as pods. Like, okay, all right, so this event,
Right, a pod being um like a slam length little section of the show that stands alone. So we're like,
right.
okay, today we're gonna let's work on the distress calls pod, or the low gravity, I think we call it like the stuff juggling Lotsie
Hmm.
of like when you're trying to set the gloves down, but they keep floating away.
Right.
And so I think a lot of the writing for the nonverbal stuff is like, oh, okay, well, first of all, we're in space, so what's fun about space? What's different about space? What's unique about space? Um, okay, like low gravity, low gravity is something that really you can only experience in outer space or on a different planet. Um, and so okay, well, what if she was dealing with, you know, all of a sudden a problem that you wouldn't have to deal with on Earth, something as simple as taking off your gloves and setting them down, and they keep floating away. Um, and then at that point, we just like, okay, well, let's get some gloves and get a radio or whatever, a stand-in for a radio, so we can sort of improvise things floating away and see, um, like what comes natural or what's fun and surprising.
Yeah,
And
so
then we'll scribe down that sequence.
so it'll start there. We'd sort of have a bigger document of ideas that we're collecting leading up to the point when we really have to hunker down and start putting things together. And it goes on and on and on, and we'll have an initial session of just cherry picking the ones we like the most, because we can't do them all, and saying goodnight to the ones that we can't do, or not goodnight so much as you're a great idea, but not for this show. We try to think in those terms a lot. And then, as Alex mentioned, taking a bullet point even and turning it into improving, or having a session that's either improvisation or writing down what we did, and then trying out different sequences for structure. And so for Marooned, Raymond, was your question
Just the
what
script. Yeah.
yeah, the script sort of emerged. It emerged for two reasons. One, there were enough instances of text throughout, very few, but enough that it was sort of a skeleton that then we could put these paragraphs of describing movement, more like choreography, in between, whether it was the text moments of text shown on a screen or the aliens. And then we knew we needed something too for the lighting designer, and even more so the person calling the cues for the lighting changes, so that they knew when was happening where and when we needed the lights to be changed. So that has now evolved into something that's describing a lot of movement for sure.
And I know like we also write and choreograph to specific music a lot of the times if it's nonverbal. So things like the sort of hand brief history of the universe up to now moment at the top of the show. Olmstead had the idea for that, and I think you already had a specific piece of music in mind, was it? And so we sort of sat down and talked about, okay, what is this piece? And once we kind of landed on, well, even if it's not totally clear to the audience, they kind of get the vibe partway through, or at least we know what it is, and it's giving the audience something, figuring out like starting with you know the Big Bang and amorphous blobs and cells dividing and eating each other and stuff. Once we had that concept, we could listen to the music and sort of hear, okay, well, about this long in the music is where we want the pre-human stuff. So what are the touchstones of that, you know, based on how many musical beats we have.
Did that answer your question? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That was one of my favorite parts of the show, actually, was the beginning with the hand movements. I love that. In fact, I almost wanted to see more of it,
Mm.
if anything. I just absolutely loved it. You know, it's interesting you talking about the pods because after seeing Maroon, uh, I came back home just because I was so fascinated trying to think of how you put everything together. I wrote down all the different movements, what I thought were the movements, and broke it down to I didn't know exactly how long the piece actually was, but I said 50 minutes, and it perfectly goes down to 10 different segments. So it's 5 minutes per segment that you have. So I wasn't sure if that was like a conscious thing or something that just kind of happened through the process of working on it.
I
I
I
would like to see your list.
oh might not be interesting for the XPT folks, especially if they haven't seen the show. Uh, I think the 5 minute thing is really because we really found our footing in puppetry through slams
Okay.
and through like clown cabarets and stuff, and really appreciating like a tight 5 minute piece,
Yeah.
that's kind of self-contained, doesn't drag
Yeah.
on too long, and um but it's not like, so short that, oh well, it's sort of underdeveloped, or unexplored. So I think we naturally just like to build in that like 3 to 7 minute uh chunk,
Oh my gosh, even with happenstance, when we're making shows together and we're working on a scene, we keep coming upon something being about 7 minutes, and then we start joking. All right, well that's 7 minutes. Like we're
Yeah,
7 minutes closer to finishing the
right.
show. I don't know
Oh
what
yeah,
that
then you two will
is.
run in and bump into each other and fall down, and like, I don't know, 7 minutes right there.
Yeah,
Like,
seven
that's
minutes.
fine. Yeah.
And then yeah, the timing of these things, I don't know why, but as Alex mentioned, there's something about that 5 minute or 7 minute mark in a scene that really feels like, okay, we're done with that. Or we're time to move into another place, or we need to progress it to something that becomes a different scene. I don't know. There's something about the internal timing of these things that really
Mhm.
feels right.
I think we love um like a tight 1 hour show,
Or
or
hour
or or
10.
hour 10, hour 15, but something without an intermission, where it just keeps that energy going, it keeps the story flowing.
Well, that's really interesting. Because Ray and I are trying to put a show together right now, and it's interesting to hear that. So for you, having intermission, it kind of stops the momentum, which makes sense.
I
Um,
think, yeah, I think stops momentum, but also it may be influenced, like we do a lot of festivals and stuff, and festivals are also always looking to, you know, they like break up their day in like 1 hour chunks. And if you can, there'll be some shows that are longer, but it limits which slots you can go in if you're that. So if you can be like a tight 1 hour show with a quick load in and low tech needs, then like that's great.
yeah.
Energetically, so much is built. I mean, the beginning of the show is also teaching the audience the vocabulary of that show. And you're also teaching the audience who they are in relation to the experience of the show. Are they another character? Are you,
How
throwing,
fourth wall is
how
it?
fourth wall is it, or is it not? Is it a show where they're quiet? Is it a show where they're, there's so much is determined that then an intermission does ultimately disrupt that. But really depends on the piece. Like sometimes that's wonderful because you come to a chapter mark and it's like, okay, volume two
Yeah.
is after you get your popcorn and a drink and use the bathroom, then, stay tuned for the next chapter of the saga, right? There's something about an intermission that could also really support the format, but if it's a shorter show anyway, um, so much momentum is built until you're sort of driving through. It really depends on what you're building. Raymond, did you have a question?
Oh, probably. No, but that's all really interesting. Yeah, we have a show. It's playing XPT. It's June 5th through this 15th, Ninja Puppet Shenaniganza featuring Raymond versus Raymond. And it's
Yes.
of short pieces that I have produced and some that Wade and I have produced together, and then a series of new pieces as well. And the conversation about the intermission is something that is ongoing, just because. I know like you say, it does have its pluses and minuses, especially it's this thing where if people are getting out of the house, going to see a baby, hiring a babysitter and driving X amount of miles, you kind of want to give them a show that they're going to be enjoying and also a show that they're going to be out of the house for more than 30 minutes for.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it does, it kind of just depends on the show, but it's an ongoing conversation. I did have a question about you guys got a grant from the Hinson Foundation,
Yes.
and I think that it would be useful for the XPTers to listening to this. We kind of learning about that. Did you get a grant for a workshop or for a showcase? Do you remember?
We got a grant for Marooned, we got actually a family grant.
Family grant. Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Mhm.
there's workshop, family, and production,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
And
great.
that's
I
what
w-
like the money is workshop is 3 or 4.
Workshop is 3,000, family grant is 4,000, and production is 7,000.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I was on the board for a couple of years a while back. But that's great that you were able to get the family grant. It's so funny because I think of it as an adult show, even though nothing about it is particularly adult, other than maybe some of the pacing. So it's great that you're able to, provide it for families that way.
Yes, and when we made it, the work that we make is, at least as of now, is we make it for all ages, but we're not gearing it toward any particular demographic within, or any age group, I should say. We,
Like we never set out to make the adult show or
right.
the kid show. It's
It's,
always like,
oh, what's the show we want to make?
yeah,
Which the shows that we want to make, we want them to be something for everyone in them, but we're not gearing them towards a particular age group. So yes, so there are these qualities to Maroon, yeah, so that are more sophisticated, pacing wise, jokes and certain themes that are that will be more appreciated by the adults in the room,
yeah. But we've
and
had a lot of
interspersed,
kids at the audiences. Yeah.
right, interspersed with moments that are just very physical or slapsticky or silly. And yes, and we love having the kiddos in the room just as much as the adults as well, because each each group brings a different kind of an awareness and feeling. And I love hearing when the kids are yelling back at the
Oh my
at the
gosh.
characters and what they have to offer. It's a sort of a deepening of the experience, I think, when both are in the room.
Yeah, I think kids are such great audience members too because they like for the most part they don't fake a laugh or they don't fake interest. So you have a really honest audience. They're not going to give you like a polite laugh most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, but they're also not going to like hold back as much as maybe an adult audience if they're not sure like, oh, is it okay to laugh? Like, am I going to be disruptive if I laugh? Like having a few kids in the audience to like kind of break that seal kind of lets everyone like, okay, like we can all breathe, we can all laugh if we want to, we can, be quiet if we want to. It just like kind of loosens everything up. But
Yeah, I think that's the reason why Pixar or Pixel no Pixar does so well. Is because they don't talk down to children, and it's
Mm,
totally parents don't mind taking their kids to see it because it's just as entertaining to them as it is the kid. I mean, you take
yeah,
the movie Wall-E, where the first 20 minutes of it is complete silence and was
oh yeah.
gorgeous.
It's beautiful and it's all um I mean it's animation, but it's all you know animated objects, right? It's not human faces that are emoting, but it's totally like, oh yeah, when the thing goes like that, I know how Wally's feeling, and like such clear, beautiful, wordless storytelling.
Well, let's
Um,
talk about that for a second. Your
yeah.
robot. In
Oh,
your case, a Marooned. Okay, who had the genius idea of not just having the closing happening from the top, but also having from the bottom? That made all the difference. That robot came alive like I've never seen a robot come alive. And it was because you were able to use both of those doors or windows, where you want to call them, to show the emotion. It was just
mm,
genius.
oh, thank you. Yeah, that's it's such a game changer that independent upper and lower lid blink. And that's something that I learned uh a version of that I learned at the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the O'Neill.
Mhm.
I took the Jim Krupa's mechanisms pre-conference workshop and uh, learned so much about the way he does, um, sort of tube and spring and string mechanics and just how to. The main thing was really like clean, reliable mechanisms that are easily serviceable too.
Mm.
So I think before that I was experimenting with a lot of mechs, but I would build things where like if it broke, you kind of had to cut the head apart, you know, instead of leaving a little access panel or something.
Yeah.
But that year that I did that, we did work on basically like a little top skull uh, that had two eyes that had independent upper and lower lids on a similar trigger and thumb slider controller, and just like playing with that, you know, we didn't. It was such a complicated mechanism that he usually does like part of the time on the mech and then part of the time on fleshing it out and fabricating it and making it more of a character. And this one just stayed as like an exposed underskull and like black eyes and just like a little you know, a little fleece on the eyelids around the wire. And playing with that was like, oh my gosh, this you can get so much emotion. It's really, really an incredible thing, you know. Humans are so, I think, instinctually trained to read read emotion in the eyes.
And there's so much that we communicate with our eyes that I think we may not even be aware of, but just that even just beyond language when we're engaging with one another, little like squeeze of the lower lid up or the top lid down, it just conveys so much to and that's really heightened
Yeah.
in this one puppet.
And then thinking too, like, you know, if the only sort of mech language you have is the lids, you start looking at like what makes it feel a little more alive, you know? So um uh like if you look to the left and then to the right, you'll find yourself there's like a blink in the middle, right? We don't like just scan from left to right. There's like just a natural blink that happens. So I always try and build that into the robot too. You know, just a little blink. It's not something it makes it like super distracting, but it gives it that little extra like, oh yeah, there's something about it that feels a little more alive and thinking.
It's interesting, Olmstead, that you mentioned the eyes and the importance of the eyes, because what happens in Maroon is that your face is covered for the entire
Yeah.
show. Was there a, a moment during the process where you guys thought, oh, we need some kind of clear shield so we can actually see your face? Or was it always, you always knew from the very beginning that her face was going to be completely cut off through the almost the entire show?
So in the workshop version that we did in 2019, you could see my face through the visor of the helmet. And
Which wasn't something we'd necessarily wanted. It was sort
no,
of
but
unintentional.
yeah, it was sort of where we had arrived in our build process by the time we hit the deadline for those workshop shows. And we got video of it. And so which was so useful to also watch and see how it landed. There are things that we cut, things that we added, things that we resequenced. So the show experienced quite a few changes, and the video helped us so much to see it more clearly. But long and short of it is that I kind of came to this awareness in watching it that my face was distracting. I just felt like the character would be so much more universal if you couldn't see the face. It was this hunch I had, and I remember talking about it. I really felt like we needed that, and it's so much stronger, I think, because we all can then imbue more of ourselves into this lonely astronaut. project more of our own feelings onto the character as we are constantly projecting onto the puppets. That's how puppetry works. That's why it's so fascinating, is that we imbue these objects with such rich emotional lives. And then that can also be done with this astronaut character as well. And it's so amazing to me that also some people don't even know it's me.
Yeah, like at the end of a few shows or during the shows, you've heard a few times like when the helmet comes off at the end, somebody was like, "Oh, it's a girl."
It's a girl. And a little girl said that actually.
Yeah,
It's a girl.
right. I think even though I don't know, well, I think it plays, a lot of people have the preconception of like the spaceman, right? And so even though like if you really thought about it, you still have a female form as you move.
But there are qualities to the costume that also
Yeah,
kind
sort
of,
of degenderify it.
yeah, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. And I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. And I think that it really serves the puppetry in the piece too,
Mm-hmm.
that you
I'm
can't.
I'm a big proponent for covering face in puppetry, especially if it's a overt puppet where you can see the puppeteer and the puppet. I know it's not everybody agrees, but if you have your face exposed, it has a tendency, as you said, to be distracting. And especially for people who don't have a lot of puppetry experience, oftentimes they're emoting with their face and they are trying to convey something with their face. Well, the focus should be on the puppet. And so it does become a bit of an ego thing, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like a bad Avenue Q where the performer is acting along with a puppet.
Oh
And it's,
yeah, and they're never looking at the puppet because they're
yeah,
always
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of covering faces in puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which was fun figuring out like um then me as the puppeteer, not just being in sort of black velvet with a hood, regular puppet costume, but also figuring out the black puppeteer version of a spacesuit. So
Mm-hmm.
still having the helmet, even though everything on it is black and disappears into the shadows unless I'm down on stage. But having that uh yeah, like have fun covering your face. It doesn't need to just be like a hood with a, sheer piece of cloth.
Yeah, it could be part of the thematic territory that you're exploring.
Yeah, and although I do tend to agree with Raymond about what he was saying, it is interesting because you are not always puppeteering. So we're watching this faceless actor performer uh, go about. So it's almost like bringing the puppeteer out from the black into the spotlight, but saying, "No, I'm the most important thing here because there is no puppet at this point." So you're just watching me, the puppeteer, not puppeting, but doing these great movements, which I would also love to hear more about because you have a background in movement. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I started off as a dancer.
Gotcha. So is that kind of how your relationship works well together? Are you kind of more the puppet side, Alex, and Olmstead, you're more the actor performer side, and that's how most pieces come together?
Uh, I don't know. We were both like live theater actors when we came into puppetry. So we sort of both come from the acting side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I came from more of a um like a building and set and props construction background, so the hands-on fabrication side of things, and like object manipulation kind of thing. I was really into juggling and circus arts and close-up magic stuff. And then Sarah came from more of a dance background.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, you know, whatever you XPT folks, whatever your background is, that's also going to inform what your puppetry looks like. And if you're teaming up with other people, it's going to be, a melting pot of those talents to create your specific flavor of puppetry.
Yeah, and we're also both writers. And I think what ends up happening is that we do wear many hats in the creation process. And Alex is an incredible engineer and has this wonderful natural propensity to be able to make an idea, create an idea and create these puppets, but engages me with my own feedback about design and how I am imagining the movement. Well, what if we had a character and it could do these things? Well, and then we will go back and forth. Well, what is the movement that it absolutely needs to do? What if it's just one trick? Or, like this kind of that aspect of the design process is one that's where we're both offering thoughts, and it's a little like we bring as many skills as we have to the table, and then as we have our list of what we need to make and what we need to do in terms of the writing, we take turns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It must be interesting. I can only imagine that working together, that there are certain movements that you probably bring to the table that influence the puppetry that's being built, and certain things that the puppets that are being built informs your movement.
Oh, yes, certainly.
Yeah.
And also, Alex is an incredible mover. I remember when not having the dance background that I have or that kind of training, you have this natural physical awareness. You're a natural dancer, and you have great rhythm, and
Well,
you've taught me so much about building and drawn that out of myself too. But you were going to share something.
oh, I think another thing that's helped a lot with our movement vocabulary is our work with happenstance. One of the artistic directors of that, Mark Jaster, has an incredible lifetime of mime training and mime study. He studied with Etienne Decroux in Paris, who was Marcel Marceau's teacher, and then served
Wow.
as teaching assistant to Marceau when Marceau came to the States and taught some workshops. So being able to work with Mark for the last 13 years and get really incredible, just on the job physical training.
Mm-hmm.
We incorporate a lot of mime into happenstance shows and physical comedy, and the more you learn about one thing, the more it helps with anything. So if you can take a dance class, or you can take a mime class, or any kind of physical in your body class, it's going to help with your puppetry, because you can just start thinking of, well, if I need to mime a certain action, what makes it clear? And it's the same way with puppetry.
Yeah.
The language of gesture.
Yeah.
That's right. I want to get to what I think probably is a lot of people's favorite part about Marooned, and that is Peanut. How did Peanut come about?
Oh,
That
our little Peanut.
Well, it came out from a math experiment you were doing with your brother.
Yeah.
Quite, if we're gonna go real nuts and bolts.
Yeah, way back when, so like as puppet builders and foam fabricators, one of the first things we learn is like how to make a sphere out of foam, right? Making sort of little petal shapes and gluing them together. And there's like a pretty good mathematical formula if you're making sort of a beach ball style ball, where let's say you have 8 petal segments that make up your beach ball, then the height of your petal is going to be 1/2 of the circumference. So pole to pole, if you imagine that stretched out, that's your height. And then the width of the petal, if the petal's sort of like that, the width is going to be 1/8 of the circumference, because it's going around 8 times. So if you just have those two measurements and make 8 of those and glue them together, you're basically going to get a sphere. And so I was thinking, oh, well, is there a mathematical way to sort of map out if you have a drawing of a non-circle shape. So like, but it's still a rotation of solid, as it's called, right? So like something that's turned on the lathe or a pottery wheel, it's still, if you look a picture of it and turn it in any direction, it looks the same. So like if you had like the shape of a peanut, uh, could you just from the drawing create those pattern pieces and have it come together and be the same?
Huh.
So we
Can
were,
you pattern a
can you
peanut?
pattern a peanut? We ended up making a video about it on our YouTube channel if you're really curious about how to
Real deep
a
cut.
real deep cut. But it was fascinating, and we were already in New Orleans where my brother lives with his family, and so we sat down and figured it out. Um, but then to fully test it, we had to build this little foam peanut. And then we were Sylvia, our niece, my brother's daughter, um, was also just being super cute. I think she was 3.5 at the time. Um, and we were getting her to like voice things for the peanut, and it was so fun. And then later when it came time to create,
Yeah, like a year later,
yeah,
we were on a road trip talking about we have this show deadline. What's going to be in the show? And it just came to me that there would be a great cosmic space peanut. And I didn't know when it would happen in the show, but I felt it was very important to have a cosmic peanut. And Alex offered, well, it has to be voiced by Sylvia. I
yeah,
mean, she was creating the voice for this peanut for this math experiment that we were made of, blah, blah, and right, of course, yes. And some of the things that she was playing and saying as she was that peanut, she could be saying. And then we also, so came time, we had some lines that we wanted her to say
that we scripted and
that we
sent to my
scripted
brother.
and sent to Alex's brother Patrick. And then others were just open-ended questions.
Yeah, so like, what is the meaning of life? Or what would you say to a friend who is moving away? Or what would you say to somebody who is lost?
Or can you sing us a song?
Right.
What does your language sound
Yeah.
like? Tell us the story of an astronaut. I mean, we had about over an hour of audio of her playing, in addition to these scripted lines that we'd sent. And so we took it all and listened to it all, transcribed it all, and then found a way to fit the best pieces together. So it was so heavily influenced by her playfulness and her voice.
Yeah, it sort of became like, we had some scripted lines and we had a general idea of what we wanted the scene to be, but really it was like, then it became this fun, almost like magnetic poetry, but with whole sentences, where it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know we had this available. Okay, let's write a totally new monologue based on what she's said. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So how percentage wise, how much was from her just playing around and versus what was actually scripted that we hear as the
I-
audience?
I'd say 50-50.
yeah, I would say too.
Yeah.
50-50. Maybe there's a little bit more airtime of what she was doing because of all of the some of what she offered is a little bit longer going, like her creating her language and
Hmm.
little things like that. But yes, I would say actual script, probably likely 50-50.
Yeah. And I think that's a great, just a great writing exercise too, uh, is like, don't be so if you have the idea for something,
Mm.
don't be so holding it so tightly that you don't give yourself the ability to play if something like that does present itself, where it's like, oh, but now I have all these other fun lines of dialogue. But if we were like, but we really just need the scripted parts, like if you can just be open with yourself and your creative partners about like, well, maybe we thought it was this thing, maybe it's actually this other thing. Let's try it out.
Well, speaking of young children, Raymond has a newborn that he has to get to. But Raymond, do you have any questions you want to part with before you got to
Yeah,
go?
I'd be interested in seeing, I know it's a big question, but just broadly, you have some really great tech elements in your show. You have the projector, you have the overhead projector, and I guess can you talk a little bit about, and also a video camera that is shooting some of the miniature puppets. That process is technical, like Alex, you're operating, you're switching. Talk a little bit about what you are doing back there.
Sure. So we have two tables set up upstage of the projection screen that have both the overhead projector that's one table and then all the video elements on the other table. Um, the overhead projector is pretty straightforward. It just has all the transparencies laid out in a way that I can find them in the dark and switch them. We have just a paper, dowser for that, so we don't have to click on and off the light. And then for the video projector, we have basically just a really nice webcam that's set up on a tripod with a ring light so we can be in the dark. That feeds to a laptop that runs a program called OBS, which is I think open source broadcast software or open broadcast software. It's a free open source program that like streamers really like to use because you can switch scenes, basically build different scenes that might incorporate things like a digital overlay. Like in the phone calls, we have that overlay slowly turning. So I can basically hit a hotkey and it switches to that scene, which is the camera and the overlay. And then the laptop really just feeds like HDMI to the projector. And if that sounds a little too fancy, the first version we ever did of the show, we just had a GoPro that was like HDMI out directly to the projector, and it was just like a live feed of the camera. And it made it super simple. And so part of the reason behind that was I think this was the third full-length show we had built, right? Milo the Magnificent, Homebodies, and then Marooned. And we were running out of space in our apartment. And so we were like, okay, we need to build a full-length show, but it can't have big stuff in it. So, okay, well, what if we did miniatures? And then we can do like tiny toy theater stuff, but have it big and projected. And then that informed some of the more like, oh yeah, that's great because it's, we can do cool, weird cinematic sci-fi stuff and have things where it's like monitor work, but we shift over so some of the audience can see it being done live.
It's very effective. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
All right, friends, I got to get out of here. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Thanks, Raymond.
Thanks,
Talk.
Raymond.
There's Tim eating.
Oh no! Busted. Oh no! It's the cave monster.
That's right. It totally is. Speaking of the cave monster, was the cave monster always going to be your face? Did you guys work with mask at all at any point, or maybe even have it as a puppet, or was it always going to be your face?
We've talked back and forth about doing a mask or doing something that drapes over so that it's not totally human, but Sarah loves the human face, if you want to talk about that.
Yes, well, it's like, so the monster that we see is a human. There's just something about the disembodied crazy face that comes out of the mountain that it's like, I don't know, Greek myth or something.
It reminds me a bit of like, we also take a lot of inspiration in general from like Georges Méliès and his early silent films, and like, I don't know, like The Man in the Moon, where it's like basically a huge human face but with a moon around it. And that early idea of like, oh yeah, aliens are they probably look like us. Maybe they have lobster claws, but people on the moon probably look like us. And this show is in a way, like I remember somebody told us after one show they thought, oh yeah, the show Marooned that we see on stage is actually a recreation of the true story of what happened to the astronaut. And she's come back and she's presenting. So that's why you can see like the puppetry happening upstage. Like they know it's a show, but it's based on the real adventures of this astronaut who got stranded. So that's, I think maybe that's why it's a human face too, because it's like, well, because we don't have a real astronaut on Earth or a real alien on Earth. Who knows?
So you end Marooned with a kind of call response with the audience. Uh, how did you get to that point? What was the decision making in doing that? And what were you trying to capture with the audience in doing that?
Hmm.
Well, we love audience participation, and we do it in every show that we make. And we got to a point in the story that was just so dire, and we needed to find a way from her losing oxygen and passing out to get to the next part of the script. And it just felt like we were really stuck trying to determine what could earn her, like what could take her to the next level. And
Yeah, I think I had the idea of um of the Vapor as a character thinking about, well, she's been isolated and alone this whole time, and it's fighting against the planet, um but maybe she's not alone, right? Like we often feel on Earth very alone, but we're not alone. So maybe it's that, like, this vapor that's been around her the entire time has been sentient, and it's actually like a helpful force, and we just, I don't know, maybe it can only communicate with people if they're on the brink of death. um and I think the choice of having the audience play that role, casting them as that role, uh is really because um uh we as theater makers need the audience. And I think it really landed for us during the pandemic, when it was like, oh yeah, we're isolated and alone in space, and as are all artists and performers, and we really need, like, those audience members to tell us, like, hey, we see you're struggling, we know what you've been through, but like you have to keep going. Like you can do it. And sometimes you have to jump into the black hole, and that's the way out through the other side.
Yeah, it's interesting. It had both a uh, children's theater feeling about it, where they have the kids say something to make the princess wake up from her sleep or something like that, and almost like a church revival of everyone lays their hands on the person. So
Mm,
you're right. It does bring about this feeling of we're watching this person being in total isolation, except for the robot that's with her. Um, but then talking about isolation, understanding that, oh, wait a minute, as an audience member, I'm sitting in this darkened room, but there's someone right next to me. Oh, yeah, there's someone
mm,
over here on the other side of me too. Wait a minute, we're not alone.
right.
right. Yeah. We're all alone together.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the I think the act of um, speaking chorally, uh, like obviously unites people in a way. I think it's why, people like to go to church. It's like you're all agreeing, okay, we're all going to say this one thing, and it might mean different things to different people, but it makes me feel connected with these people. Um, and so to uh, also give them, it's almost um, like support training.
Mm.
If we give them, here are direct lines. You don't need to solve the problem of how to be helpful. Here are some lines. If you choose to say it along with the group, you can, and that helps, and we would love that. But like, here's in a safe place, a way for you to get the experience of being helpful. and how does that feel in your body? And when you leave the show, maybe you're a little more in tune, looking for people that might need help, and you feel a little more confident in that you can reach out and say something simple and help people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Out of an hour-long show, that possibly Peanut or the audience had the most amount of lines.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. And I don't think you could do uh the Vapor or Peanut if it was, way earlier in the show. Like, you kind of have to get to a point, um, especially with the Vapor and audience participation, where uh like the audience feels safe enough to all of a sudden all be speaking in unison together and like accept that ask.
Well, we've built the trust.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten to a point in the show where we have built this trusting relationship with the audience. And it is an act of faith that we are asking people to play along in this way that is risky because people could choose not to, and yet they do. There's audience participation I love so much because it's also a reminder of how necessary the audience is. This show doesn't exist without the audience. There's such a necessary piece of the puzzle. They're the other character that we're playing with or against, and that that relationship of the energy coming and receiving and taking and receiving is so critical for live theater. And yeah, it's a
Mm-hmm.
lovely culmination of all of those elements, and this relationship we've been building with them through this story, the telling of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Well, for all those that miss Maroon, shame on you, but I'm sure you will be bringing it back to the center at some point in the future, which I will definitely see it again. But for those who did miss it, you're not going anywhere. You're not going back to Baltimore yet. You're staying
Mm-mm.
right here,
No.
We're
because your
downstairs.
show, Milo the Magnificent, will be playing March 19th through the 30th. Can you
Mm-hmm.
That's
tell
right.
us a
We
little
open
about
tomorrow.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that show? Because I myself have not seen it yet, even though I think this is your second time bringing it to the center.
Yeah, we did it
Yes.
right before lockdown in 2020. So Milo is a young aspiring magician who is performing for the first time on stage in front of anybody, and basically all his tricks go terribly wrong. That's sort of the elevator pitch.
Okay.
It's really fun. It's like involves some fun, innovative puppetry that we haven't seen elsewhere. And it like Milo was sort of our when we mentioned Clown Cabaret, Milo was the character that we were doing stuff with, and then people said, "Oh, you have to go do puppet slams." So he's sort of our connective thread through our whole puppet career. And that show's totally wordless.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Great,
Yeah.
great. But also, do you have the audience participation kind of thing happening, or no?
Audience participation in terms of um, he acknowledges them as uh, we are in a theater and you are a live audience, and so there's a ta-da relationship.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like, it's
Gotcha.
not he's in his studio practicing alone, pretending they're not there. It's like it's very much we're in a
Everything,
vaudeville theater.
yeah, and everything he does is for the audience and for
Yeah.
constantly checking in with them and seeking their response and
Mm-hmm.
approval. So
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, when you finally do leave Atlanta, very sad to hear, uh, you will still be around thanks to the internet. Can you talk, Sarah, a little bit about your page on YouTube and what you try to put out there for other people to get some knowledge and stuff?
yes, we have actually Alex is gonna drop it right now. So Yes, our YouTube. So we have a lot of videos on there that are build videos or tutorials. We have backstage tours of places where we've performed. We have trailers for the shows that we've made or are actively being made. And we have videos of automata that Alex has built. And it's sort of a catch-all for all of the things that are related to our puppet creations and puppet explorations during lockdown. When our theater gigs were canceled, we were making videos very frequently. We love, we've learned so much by watching videos on YouTube and the artists that have shared aspects of their craft. And so we really believe in that dissemination of information. The more knowledge we all have as makers, the better the things we make will become, because we have more information and we have more support in that way. And so yes, we love the education branch of what we do. And that's why also we love talking with audiences after our shows and answering questions about how we made things, because we know what we know because of the generosity of other artists and teachers. And so we like to keep pass that on and keep that dialogue continuing beyond us. And I think that's the catch-all.
Yeah, it's also really fun, like because things live on the internet forever. You know, if you do a show and connect with an audience, you might run into somebody from that audience years later who saw that one show, which is really exciting. But we'll have people come up to us after shows and be like, "Hey, I saw your video on how to straighten wire. Like that really saved me when I was building something." And it's like, "Oh yeah, we made that video too." Like it's really cool that that knowledge can just live on. Yeah.
I mean, it is so important. Obviously, that's kind of what we're trying to do with XPT, because I think I told you before that we bring people who have a lot of puppetry experience or a lot of building experience, and we team them up with people who have no experience, and see what kind of pieces that can be created from that. And it's always quite magical, and it's great that you're sharing your information like that on YouTube.
It's so important. XPT is so important. And thank you for keeping it running and organized and having a platform to create new works is so essential.
And thank all of you XPT folks for participating.
Yes, and taking risks
Yeah.
and trying new things.
There's no better outro than that. That was fantastic. Thank you. That's perfect.
Right on.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Your Maroon was gorgeous piece of work. Absolutely enjoyed it so much. And I'm definitely going to see Milo as well. So I can't wait to see it.
Oh, thanks. Good
Thank
to talk to
you.
y'all.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.